Welcome to Just Saying episode 28. And I'm being joined tonight by, of course, as always, the Bromeo, Skill Steel, and don't be fooled, Noob Slice, a fellow Bald Steel under that cap. Gentlemen, hello and welcome. Skill, I was saying to you, it feels like it's been 4 seasons since we had you here last.
Yeah, quite a lot has happened in between, but yeah, keen to get into it. Happy to be back.
And Noob, have you ever been on the podcast?
Nope.
Wow. Okay. Shout out to Noob Slice for being
Imagine,
on the podcast.
first words. Nope.
Saving my breath.
And
Yeah,
how's it to all the guys that are here in chat? We saw Nobody and Tubbsy and Eli and Vinko. Subzan's also here. Good to have you all here. So we have to start first and foremost with a little bit of a recap of what's happened in the last few days. Jason and Pyro, hello, I see you there. The 1v1 Cash Cup, which ended on Thursday night, and it was quite interesting. 237 people signed up. Around my rough calculation, and I didn't go in depth, was about a quarter of those were from SSA. So it wasn't looking very good. But then out of the top 64 for day 2, close to 50%, 30 out of 64 remaining players were SSA players. And then on the final day, the top 12, it was evenly split, 6 SSA, 6 EU, and 5 of the remaining top 8 were SSA. And then, of course, going into the final was Sweaty and Snowy taking that down. So big up to them. And Noob Slice, big shout out to you and your admin team who got me into the lobby for the lower final and the upper final. That was really, really cool. So thank you for that.
Yep, we're gonna try and expand on that for the next Cash Cup, which the registrations should be live. But yeah, they went live 2 minutes ago. So yeah, hopefully we can arrange something like that to have you in more lobbies, just to really get the coverage out there.
So yeah, a little bit of a nice little segue, a punt there from Noob Slice. The Cash Cup, 2v2 Cash Cup, registrations are open. Get in there and get those registrations done. And then RLCS weekend, which was rough from an SSA perspective, rough. Going into Friday night, 5 out of 16 teams were SSA, and I'm being very generous there because I'm counting Relentless, which is a 1/3 SSA roster with Zany on it. And by the time the dust settled there, going into Saturday, the top 8, the remaining 8 teams, out of 24 players competing on Saturday, 4 were from SSA. Bromeo, what are the numbers on that? What's the percentage of that? 4 out of 24.
4 out of 24. That's what, 15% basically?
Low.
Yeah.
So and then Limitless being swept by Hayworth Riz, and then losing in the semi-finals to Foot. So it was without a doubt the worst weekend from an SSA perspective since the start of RLCS in SSA. And quite naturally coming out of that, emotions are a little high and a little tense. And on Friday, and I have to confess at the outset that when I tweet, a good 95% of my tweets are impulsive. I have a thought and I tweet it, which is never a safe and a healthy way to engage on social media. And this was my thought. It came out of the Cash Cup, and it didn't occur to me when the Cash Cups were announced that it was going to be that the same region, the lack of region restrictions would also apply to the Cash Cups. I don't know why in my fantasy mind that it would be open to SSA only. So I was really bleak about that. And then looking ahead to the main event in RLCS and the lack of the low number of SSA people there. And I had this thought that maybe when SSA was included in RLCS all the way back in September of 2021, maybe it was a bit premature because we are such a small community, had such a small player base. Well, I might as well quickly go and show the tweet. There it is there. And my comment was that it is quite possible. It is quite possible, including SSA and APAC in RLCS was premature. I wonder if it would have been better to give the region 4 cash cups per year with a similar prize pool to the ones that are ongoing, open to the region only, and alongside that a bit of money for support, for streams and for tournament organizers and some marketing. All of this could be done for less than the current prize pool budget for 6 regionals, and then set benchmarks to achieve for us to be included in RLCS. I would 100% back a move in this direction. So that was the tweet. And my thinking was, you know, the prize pools are fairly substantial, currently at $25,000 per regional. Back when we started, it was around similar, it was around $20,000. And it all works out to like 2 million rand, or I don't know, is it 2.8 million or 1.8? It's a lot of money. And I went, wow, we could do amazing things. So that was my thinking there. And I think it upset a lot of people, which was never the intent. But that was my thought. And now I guess, you know, Bromeo, you and I have had some discussions about that. But Noob, you pushed back yourself. So I think I'm going to open with you and get your immediate thoughts on well, specifically that, and then we're going to talk more broadly.
Okay, well, it's so multifaceted, you know, the topic, that it's very difficult to just enter into it and do kind of like broad strokes. So it really depends how you want to look at it. If we look back to when RLCS was announced, we were excited. We were like, awesome, we've got money coming into Rocket League. We're invited into RLCS. So from a perspective, you know, like going back to then and going, holy moly, 2021, there's a Rocket League community that's been unserviced for absolute ages. You know, my involvement in Rocket League was running the 80K, the 80K Rocket League tournament alongside some names back then. I think it was Werty, and I'm forgetting the gentleman's name now because I haven't had much sleep. What is the absolute gorgeous human being that used to help SSA so much move to Europe? What is his name?
Palliser.
Palliser, thank you. My
Yes.
brain, Palliser, if you're watching, I'm so sorry. Like, I have so much love and respect for you. And the role that he played in you know, really pushing for SSA to get to a place where it could be recognized was absolutely admirable. He came to me and said, I've got this pitch for you. It was a 12-page long document about this is how I would want to run a tournament. And if this tournament does well, I want to run a league. He literally did what I did to get into esports, which was literally come with an idea, come with a pack of papers and go, let's fucking run this thing. Can I swear on this podcast? Am I allowed to swear on this podcast?
Go for it. Well, we're
okay. So looking back to those humble days, you know, that in my mind as well was such an esports dream for me. Is I really want to impact esports in a way that will uplift the community, and be involved in any way with that kind of thing is my dream. And, you know, when RLCS rolled around and I was put forward for regional manager and all of that started happening, you know, the dream started to come alive very quickly, that we had gone from 0 to hero in a space of 2 months, right? Like 2 months came around and we went, we have nothing. We have these tournaments that are running on the grace of TOs and on the grace of benefactors we're in RLCS, a crazy amount of prize money for a first year. That then went into, cool, we're included in wildcard, we're not included with majors. And we went, you know what, no worries, 1 year with this kind of inclusion, this kind of prize pool and backing, publisher backing is incredible, let's run with it. You know, then like classic, like anyone in any space who gets given anything, we want more and we want more, we want more. Then we look at, listen, we want to be involved with majors. We didn't have majors for 2 years, but we still got the highest prize pool in South African esports by far. You know, as a minor region, we had the most prize money coming into the country. And then, like I said, this is quite an expansive topic, so please shut me down at any point if you want to. And then we got to the point where we were included with majors. Then majors rolled around and we were like, hell yeah, we've got majors. But then also this concept of a non-region locked open circuit came at the same time. It was in the same time, and it was very difficult for everyone to understand and, you know, to kind of deal with, like, how is it going to affect us? We don't know how it's going to affect us. Let's hope that the ping keeps everyone away. And for I think a good time it did that, but after a while we started to see all the problems coming. So this happened very much off the back of the fact that the Psyonix competitive team went through a transition. And that transition was, upon Epic Games acquiring them, there was a change of teams, there was a change of strategy, change of format, change of intention. And all I can say is that working behind the scenes with Epic Games and Psyonix at any given point, everyone's intentions have always been good. There's never been a time where someone has looked at SSA and kind of gone, all right, we're including them for the BEE points. Not that they need that or get that, but there was none of that kind of thought from their side. It was always a thought of inclusion, always thought of, let's really push it to the next level and get them majors, and that's what was done. So internally, there was fighting for the region from the side of the publishers. But then what happened was we said, cool, open circuit, point one. Open circuit's incredible. We don't want franchise in RLCS. We don't want a soft franchise cap. We want anyone to be able to be sitting in their bedroom and be able to make a dream out of RLCS, which is what they did, which I think best move for any esports. Counter-Strike, I don't know if they are moving in that direction. I believe they are. A lot of massive esports are in that direction. Valorant, not so much. But that was the incredible start. South Africa's on the map. There's a publisher investing in South Africa. Then it was wildcard. Then it was, okay, so we want to bring SSA to majors. Let's get that locked in. But then the transition of teams happened, and then another thought process came in, which was, all right, we are now aligning the Rocket League ecosystem with the Epic Games ecosystem, which is something like Fortnite.
Yeah.
Now, how they treat Fortnite is there are no region locks on Fortnite. If you're South African and you can play on EU and you can make it through EU to a major, you make it. It doesn't matter where you're from.
Yes.
So now having to align the two games on that same kind of thought pattern is how we ended up here. Great intentions from one team, great intentions from another team that just didn't necessarily gel well together. Where we had an open circuit with no region lock. Okay, we have a region that is geographically and historically cut off from the rest of the world. They're not as developed. Fuck, then you want to go, maybe we shouldn't have entered so early. Maybe we should have waited a bit. But the problem wasn't that. It's that the region wasn't protected. The unintentional outcome of everything was that SSA was pretty much caught in a position where it was given the go-ahead, it was given all the love, it was given the money like we've never seen, groundbreaking, but now we're falling in line with an ecosystem that works for established regions, not non-established regions.
Right.
APAC, SSA have experienced the same issues. And that's pretty much how I see it. I have to see it in this kind of big picture, because looking at it from this season alone and, foot esports and all of those kinds of things, it's a long reason as to why we got here. So that being said, do changes have to be made? Personally, I can't really speak to that. I can't have an opinion because these are my employers. But I do think that this was not done out of spite. This was done out of the best intentions being applied to the esports and to the region with a transition in mindsets, not really being able to predict what would happen. Sorry, that was a 20-minute
No, it's
response to your
fantastic.
message.
Oh, that was perfect.
I
That
think-
was perfect.
I
Okay,
gave it
so-
a lot of thought. When you said to me, "Do you want to come on?" I sat and I had a cup of tea on the balcony, and I was like, "I have to
Listen, I
really
know
give it a
about
thought."
how long it took for you to get back to me.
I almost didn't, but I really felt like this is something that, from the perspective of the casters, the admins, the players, everyone, like we have a rich history of 4 years. It's not a lot of time, but it's such a rich history, and it's a beautiful history that's being overshadowed by an unfortunate conflict of I want to say ecosystem procedures, which is awfully sad, because I think that's also Greybeard. The tweet really like brought that up in me, because I was there when we got the thing, man, and you were so excited about it, and I think that's why it hit me so hard as well, because your love and your passion for it was something that excited me about it as well. It was nice to see someone who gave a crap about Rocket League before I did, embrace the process and really do the most that they can to make it what it could be. So I think that was also why I responded the way I did to your tweet, is because you are really a figurehead for a lot of people in the community. In that sense, the hype man of SSA, official, unofficial, whatever you call it, you're official to us. So yeah, I know it's a difficult spot, but I don't think that the road ends here. So yeah.
Okay,
I'm
so
amazed.
I think that was a fantastic sort of recap of where we are, and I think there's more opinions you need to give and will give as we go on here. But I'm going to come to skill steal, but I want to say two things. One is chat. If you have questions, thoughts, opinions, whatever, please give them. You're more than welcome. We want to include that. We want to get as many diverse opinions as possible. And then second, all the things we're talking about, I mean, that tweet and everything else that we feel we have a limited amount of power here. You know, we can absolutely raise our voices and hope that they get heard, and hope that there's people looking at it, thinking about it, and seeing if there's ways to evolve the ecosystem and how we do it and all of that. But all of this is theoretical. The things like 2/3 rule, or what I was suggesting, let's get out of RLCS and just have community. These are all just opinions and worth talking about, but with the understanding that the rules are the rules. And by all indications, this is the way it is going to be. Far bigger voices than mine and ours are saying that this rule is not good. The chalked cast, first touch, they have touched on it. They have said it cannot go on this way, and hopefully it will evolve. But until it changes, we have what we have. So having said that, now, Skill Still, you're up. And then, Bromeo, I realize you've said 4 words. You're definitely going to have a chance to talk soon. Go for it, Skill.
All right, yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. Just to start off with the initial statement, or referring to your tweet where you thought it was maybe premature that we were included. I don't think there's a statement that can be made to say we were prematurely included. None of us could have foreseen that this would be how it would turn out. In the initial inclusion from a player's perspective was insane, regardless of the prize pool. No one ever played this game for money because there was none to start off with. We played VS and ATK had a few things for pennies. You were playing for basically nothing. So all of these players, the Snowies, the Worties, the CPZs, the No Clips, all the people from back then played this game because they liked the game. They played it because they wanted to be something, be somewhere. They looked up to RLCS. They wanted to be an RLCS for a very long time. I think CPZ and Snowy and them ran EU qualifiers, but it wasn't for RLCS. It was for something else. They actually I think it was RLRS. Yes, they did qualifiers for EU. This was way, way back. So they tried every single avenue that they could to get somewhere. And because we weren't included in RLCS, it was basically VS and that's it. And right before our initial inclusion with RLCS, we played the very last VS LAN, which CPZ still played in. And I remember thinking that this guy has been playing this game for an insanely long time, working his ass off to get into RLCS, and now he's going overseas as we are getting included into RLCS. So seeing like players' dreams break down because not being included, to their dreams being broken because we included, bar a few restrictions like the inclusion for EU and whoever else to come and swoop and take away players' dreams and all that. But that being said, so I don't think we were prematurely included because no one could have seen that we would be in a position where we are now. And then just feeding off of what Noobsly said, regarding how Epic divided, or not divided, but tried to bring together 2 ecosystems that don't gel well together. I think it is inherently bad to try and create a standard for 2 solutions that have nothing to do with each other, Fortnite and Rocket League. They're 2 very, very different games. You cannot make any argument that would say these are the same games. They have rocket racing, but that fell apart in like a day. So I think trying to implement a standard and saying we did this for Fortnite, we should do it for Rocket League is something that is very, very damaging to a game like Rocket League. There's nothing like it. There's nothing else like it. You cannot pick up a game, play it, and then switch over to Rocket League and be the best ever. Like there's no carryover. You can play Apex and be good at that. Go over to CS and have some fundamentals, have some baseline to work off of. Rocket League, you cannot do that. It's such a unique environment. It's such a unique landscape, which I think I just do not think it's a good idea to try and mold together one big picture where you have Fortnite, Rocket League, and whichever other ecosystem they wanna mold with. So
To speak to that,
yeah,
I think that it works well in an established region. So a region like NA, for example,
Mm.
EU, South America, Oceania, on the edge, of that question. It works well there because the T1 part of RLCS or Rocket League is established in those regions. Those guys have a ranked ecosystem that really upskills players to a point where they're competitive at the highest level. They have SSLs that are SSLs because they are the best in the region, not because of a low population, not because of anything like that. So I think an open circuit there really works, and a region lock not being applied there works, because now you're coming to play against some of the best players in the world on their home turf, whether you go there or you do it online or not. Where SSA, I think, Greybeard, if your tweet said that SSA was open to an open circuit, no region lock prematurely, I would have agreed with you
Okay.
100%.
Okay.
Because I think that the minor regions, are always going to be susceptible to that type of I want to say, participation from people who are outside the region. And this goes into one of the points I thought about today, is I know there was a lot of animosity towards the EU players, coming in, destroying the region in inverted commas and things like that. But if you look at it from a completely, objective point of view, they're coming in and they see an opportunity that the rules allow completely for them to come in and to earn money from a multi-billion-dollar company, right? To expect them to give a shit about the local community, about people they don't know, about people that have never done anything for them. It's an unrealistic expectation. So people who have this issue with the EU teams at the end of the day also need to realize that they're not doing anything wrong. Like by the book, by the rule book, they're just not doing anything wrong. And I know that there's a conversation to be had about, all right, well, what about, they know it's a developing region. Why not let the region develop? Why not be involved? Why not try and grow the region? All these kinds of things that we can discuss. But if you open a door for anyone, they're going to take it. And their intentions will almost always be self-focused, which, again, I'm not saying is morally good or morally bad.
Every player is in it for themselves. And I have a couple of hot takes all wrapped up in one, and then I'm going to throw it open to you guys and to chat. I came to realize, the region restriction removal came as a shock. It came very suddenly and quickly, and we had YMC coming out, and it was all just wild and crazy. But I came to realize that it is not the job of pro players to care about anyone other than themselves. Their job is to be good at the game and to win, and I came to accept that. However, within that scope, I have EU players in my DMs almost every day. Unbelievably amazing EU players who do want to help, who do say, if there's anything I can do, tell me what I can do. I'd love, I want to help the scene. What can I do? And some of them are more effective than others. Some are more proactive than others, but there are an army of those. In fact, I have more EU players messaging me with that than I do local pros who talk to me and say, how can we improve the scene? In fact, I can probably think of two. One is Eli Kim and one is probably DAP. So the only people local pros who talk to me about the broader scene. That has led me to believe that pro players know what is good for them. Pro players do not know what's good for a community. That's what I believe. It's a hot take, and I want to get people's feedback and thoughts on that. Secondly, I think the skill level of the region has improved far more in the last season and a half of EU players being here than one team going to a LAN 2 to 3 times a year would ever improve the scene. Those are my hot takes. Feel free to jump in, chaps.
Well, I just want to leap in. There's a whole bunch of stuff that's been said so far, and some of it's controversial, some of it's just logical, and all of it is completely unemotional, which is good. I'm from a firm standpoint. When Greybeard made that tweet that should we be included, was it premature? No, I don't think it was. Remember, there's an Italy in the Six Nations. There's a Namibia in the World Cup of rugby. There are always going to be teams who aren't as strong as others. And it is global inclusion. It's just the way that the world is now. And this comes to, having imports in our own circuit. And, is that a good thing? Maybe, maybe not. But there is also, and I can't remember who told me this, there's a direct relationship between the amount of sky that you can see at night and the amount of people who study astronomy. And the reason why I say that is that if you can see the ceiling and you can see how high it goes, it strives you to be better. And I feel like SSA had been so isolated for so long, it had formed its own microcosm that had been untouched, and it was great. And when prize pool money started coming into the region, it was this little brief golden era of Rocket League and an SSA where everybody had grinded for the last couple of years was finally being remunerated for their time and their efforts. And like most things, if you take it away, people are going to be upset. And this is one of those occasions where people are no longer guaranteed an income that people had started to depend on, rely upon, expect. And that hurts. That sucks. When something that, was almost a certainty is now completely uncertain, and for some, completely unattainable. And that is also why I completely understand why the current pro scene are very angry, very bitter, very upset with the people coming and taking their livelihoods, because that's what it is. People were earning money from this who are no longer earning money from this. And it can be diluted further into passion and all of those things, but just purely from an economic perspective, that's what this is, as an opportunity has been given and then taken away. And we can say, how do we pass forward from this? It's a very difficult to answer, because now we're delving into the realms of hypothetical. What do we do with all of these people in our region? Well, we deal, because there isn't much more we can do. And the question then becomes, what do we do in this situation? How do we deal? And I feel like that's where we are, because yes, Greybeard said, was inclusion in RLCS premature? I would strongly disagree, but it's also led us to this very point now where it doesn't matter if it was. We are here and we have to deal with it somehow.
I'm being quiet so somebody else can jump in.
Yeah, just to go off of on what Romeo also just shortly mentioned. And Romeo, I know you can tell me I'm talking nonsense or not. A little while back, you made the same statement but in different words, where you phrased it in a way to say that some pros are mad because they're not getting as much out of Rocket League as they got included. I think that's, and you can at any point stop me and say I didn't say that. I'm not trying to misquote you. And I think it's a little unfair to say that these pros are mad because they're not getting as much money. I can say from personal experience that none of these guys ever complained about what they got and what they didn't get financially from this game. I think it's purely just off the basis of the opportunity that they've been working towards is now all of a sudden taken away, not by rules that are fundamentally good. There are no ill intentions behind them, but I think the execution implementation is, but that's a topic for another day. But I think to say that some of these pros aren't financially getting what they got out of it is a little unfair. But I kind of lost my train of thought there for a second.
It's okay.
There's so many topics and so many things running through my
Yeah.
mind trying to get it out there. But yeah, I'll just close it off on that statement and
So
then once they get
essentially
it
what you were
back.
what you were telling me is that I made a sweeping statement that players are motivated by money, and unfortunately, some players aren't getting money anymore. I'm just trying to understand so that I can try
Yeah,
and
yeah,
remember. Like,
that was pretty much the basis of. Um, and yeah, like I said, I've played with some of these guys in a team personally as well. And it was never about the money. It was never about the financials. Everyone just wanted to be an RLCS from day one, from the start. For me as well, you set your eyes on RLCS, and that's all you see.
that's
And we
fair.
got included. Finally got included after all these years. We got our own space to improve. There was no outside pressure. Oh, I just remembered what I wanted to touch on.
Okay.
The statement on the improvement in SSA being largely based off of the imports. I've said this before, and I'll probably reiterate the same. The same thing is that fundamentally SSA does not benefit from import. So what I mean by that is we have at most two teams, if give or take, whoever peaks on the day. We have one guaranteed team that benefits from imports, and we all know who that is. That is Limitless. The other team you can put in there, Cosmico, maybe. You can put in, well, Guns' team, which now doesn't seem to be a team anymore. They could have probably benefited. Or anyone that is close to Limitless's level, they benefit from imports. Everybody else is fundamentally not ready. What I mean by fundamentally. So you have your rotations, hitting the ball at least, not missing it 90% of the time, playing with speed, grabbing boost pads, your game sense, just the pure base Rocket League doing that well. And we have one team that does that well, and that's Limitless. Nobody else will benefit from imports. I think the improvement we've seen up until this point is just pure natural. Players keep playing the game, they grind. You get better that way. You don't get better overnight by playing a better team. Getting clapped 9-0 does nothing for you. So the natural progression we've seen is just that. It's purely natural. And just feeding off of that, just speaking about the Limitless situation, they they have been struggling a little bit against imports, but I don't think for them it's a skill issue. I don't think for Limitless they prove it in the Cash Cup that they're three very capable players. We all saw that. We have two of them in the semifinals and the finals, one of them winning it. So they're three very capable players. So what do you do if you have three very capable players on one team? You don't tell them get good. You tell them let's change things up. Let's get some strats going. You see Casey and NRG, they're doing the same thing. They're doing the same play over and over. They're trying to change the meta. For Limitless, I think it's just a play style issue. It's not a pure thing of they must get good, they must be better. For them, I think it's just purely play style. They must just try different things, be more creative. We saw over the weekend that the types of goals they were letting in or the types of offensive plays they were trying to muster up wasn't creative. There was nothing in there that tells you that they're leading the game, that they're trying to take it their own way. It was either off of a demo, misrotation from their team demo, we score. But then they were getting scored on right after that with a simple edge dribble going past two players into the net. Like that doesn't tell me Limitless is being creative. It's not proactive. Inherently SSA has always been just be reactive because the other team will mess up, miss backboard, miss aerial, miss flip reset. And I think for them, they're set in their ways so much that reactive play style is no longer working. Sure, up until a point, the Laboshes, the Cristobal Colon, anybody else below that, it still works. But for Foot and the Hay with Rizzes, they just need to change their play style. They need to try something different. They need to take the game to the other side of the field and not let it come to their side and try and create mistakes. Sorry, I just went off of a entirely different.
No, brilliant.
But I think, yeah, for Limitless, nobody else benefits from imports. It's only Limitless.
Okay.
And I think it ties as well, skill, back into what I said initially about, NA and EU having a very rich ranked ecosystem where you can actually pick up skills and you can improve just from logging onto the game. Where John says in chat, that there are players at the level where benefits from said imports come more from contributions to the ranked ecosystem and not 6 opens a year. So that's also something I agree with on his part, is that they're not contributing to the game long term. They're contributing for the short one-shot format, which is very unforgiving. That format is extremely unforgiving. If you, because of such a low number of teams in our double elim day that we only get one of, where other regions get two because they have enough players, if you lose 2 games, you're out. And if you
Mm.
happen to be seeded against a Cosmico that's local or a Hay with Riz that's higher and you're quite a low seed, you're not going to improve because by the time you're done with the second game, you're just going to be like, can I FF? Like, this is
Yeah.
embarrassing. And no one's going to stick around to tell you, you could have done this better, or this is something that we learned early on that maybe you would benefit from. And I saw it in at LAN events where Limitless played. Was every single opponent they played against, they won the first game or came close to winning the first game. Why is that? Because the opponents are playing against a completely reactive team, which they're not used to. They're used to playing against a team that has a way of playing and adapting to the game, where we don't adapt to the game on LAN as SSA. We end up playing this aggressive, reactive, scary, aggressive Sam Mena style Rocket League, which takes all teams kind of by surprise and puts you on the front foot. But the moment they identify that, it's then a case of just stealing your back boost, demoing you off the crossbar, and rinse and repeat. And that's the rest of our games look like. So what we need is we need some sort of mentorship for our players that comes from people who have had to learn the hard way through trial and error in a ranked ecosystem, in multiple tournaments spanning years. Like, I think that's where I want to corroborate both on what Skillstill and John said.
Which brings me back to the point I was trying to make, Noob, is that, well, if we're not getting any benefit from the EU players, where is our benefit coming from? In my mind, we have such a small base that it's very hard just to rank up to a high skill level, because by the time you're sort of hitting GC1 into GC2, you're struggling to get local games. It's all the same players. So my thought in the tweet was, if there were 4 cash cups a year going into promoting the game and getting more people into it to grow the base, so in a year or two there are now 200, 300, 400 more people hitting that level of into GC1, 2, 3, that we actually can look to get better by playing amongst our own players. But how do we get better? I don't understand it. So we're not getting imports. Where does the natural improvement come from?
I mean, if you're not getting more players from a 3 million rand a year prize pool and a chance at playing at wildcard, you're not going to get more players any other way. Firstly, the way it was done in the first year, I think how it was done, is the best way it could have been done in the first year. Not in terms of what we were given. I mean, a major spot would have been cool. A Lamborghini for every player would have been cool. But I mean more from the perspective of, the money was there, absolute record-breaking money. The professional tournament organization was there. Shout out to my team who are absolutely incredible at what they do. There were people who were responding to support tickets. There were people who were enforcing the rules as they were written, not changing rules halfway. There were people who were completely fair. Like I had a team of 10 admins in the first years, which is
Wow.
unfortunately dwindled since then because of certain factors. But it was the best way it could have been run. And I think you're asking how else could players benefit? You know, I really think that it has to come from a change in how the community reacts to itself. The community needs to start giving a shit about itself, and I think that is something that's been a real long time coming. But also, as a tournament organizer and as admins, that's not something we ever get involved with. That's something that it's not our jurisdiction. We make sure things run A to Z, but all of my admins know that we all have an incredible heart for the community, and that is why we do our job to the level that we do it. However, it's not our jurisdiction to be able to try and grow the community. That has to come externally, and that's what you've been trying to do, Greybeard. Like things of what you're doing, the stuff that's been happening through ACGL at schools, that was what the community needs more of. But now we get into the crux of the matter, where now we're talking grassroots.
Mm.
You and ACGL are fixing grassroots. We need community amongst the top teams. I go to a LAN and I see the Oceanic teams. I see Wildcard. I see all the OCE teams. They are together 24/7.
Mm.
They are the best mates. They've known each other all the way back since they started playing Rocket League.
Mm.
Porsos and all of those guys and Fever, and they all know each other. And they are a great example of iron sharpens iron. And I see that in in like, hey, mate, we've got a game later. Do you guys want to scrim? They'll come and sit in each other's booths and they'll watch the other team's demos in the same tournament that they're playing in. And they'll say, okay, cool. This was your game that you played. Let's chat about it. Like, this is a problem we don't have in OS, but it's a problem we have on LAN. I've sat there, and I've heard these things come from them. So I really think it is not a skill issue, but it's a community issue. I think that if the top 4 teams in SSA really decided to take a front together and really try and take on the RLCS in its form as it is, or maybe as it might become next year or in however many years, I think that'll make the biggest difference. Mentorship from the top, but also there being understanding from people who are tier 2, teams that are tier 3, tier 4, that there is a progression. And it's through community. It's not through some kind of unspoken rank system or how cool you are or which discords you're in or what Twitter wars you're a part of. It's about in the social structure of Rocket League in South Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa, if everyone contributes, you earn your place. You know what I'm saying? And like you said at the beginning, professional players don't give a shit about anything except themselves. That we see that through a lot of esports. But if you look at tier 1 esports, you look at Counter-Strike, those guys bleed for each other. Vitality, they just played one of the most banger CS games I've ever seen in my life this weekend. Those guys bleed for each other. Manasi followed Nico to Falcons because he bleeds for that guy. He doesn't, it's that kind of love and community that really needs to get into the head of South Africans. We TOs and players alike have this concept of this is mine, I'm going to protect it. And not as this is ours, together we can cultivate it. So that's like the final word I have on it.
I want to emphasize that point because I think out of all the blabber we've had in the last 40 minutes, for me, that is an exceptionally important thing that you've just said. And I don't understand why the higher level community in our region is so shit toward each other. I don't understand why. I mean, it's bizarre. We have lost players, young players who've come in all wild-eyed and woolly and excited and whatever, and the amount of toxicity and bullshit. I mean, I've seen players come and then leave and go, you know what, I just don't want to deal with this shit, and they go. So we have managed to be quite divisive within our own community, and I probably about a year and a half ago, I went, because I'm all optimistic and, hey, why can't we all just love each other and do great things and whatever. I gave up. I gave up with 6-mans. I gave up with, generally speaking, trying to help that community because I just don't know how. I don't know what they respond to, and I got very despondent at the way they treat each other. And Skill Still, just to put you on the spot here, I don't know why that is. I don't know if you see a solution to that. I don't know what you observed about it. What's your take on that?
You just have to reiterate the question. I was just reading Twitch chat. There's a lot going on there, so you just have to summarize quickly.
Okay, basically, so the point Noob Slice raised was the higher levels of SSA Rocket League are not really a cohesive and supportive community for each other, where it's like, okay, guys, we've got this invasion of Europeans. How are we all going to fucking get better and try and repel this? We may lose, but we will go down fighting. And in my experience in dealing with that community is it's not very supportive of each other. The egos, I'm amazed at how quickly egos find themselves as people sort of rank up, and they, like you join 6-mans and you very quickly have to find your clique. You're part of these guys or you're part of those guys, and then we start to eat each other, and I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, the sad thing is it's always been like that. Things have come into community to try and fix it. 6-mans was kind of, I guess, a way to try and build the community. The EU and NA one doesn't really do that, but I think the fundamental goal for 6-mans was kind of build a community. Say, listen, whenever you want to queue up with whoever, let's get it going. You jump in a voice chat, you start chatting, get to know the guys. But it's never been like that. The guys at the top just want to mingle with whoever's the best. The guys at the bottom just mingle. I mean, that's the funny thing, right? If you're not good at Rocket League, you mingle with whoever. You chat to everybody. Everybody's everybody's friend. Once you get to the top, then that kind of just starts filtering down until you have like a group of 7 or 8 players that don't chat to anyone below them, And it's hard to say why that is. You chat to these guys, and there's never a reason to say that's why I don't scrim this team. That's why I don't talk to this person. They might have had beef. I mean, you know the beef that a lot of players had back in the day. What was his name? I can't remember. But there were like always two players beefing with each other, and then they're not friends. Then their friends are not friends, and then you start getting this little divide in the community, and that builds off of that. And I can't really say how to fix that. It's a very because if no one's going to pitch in, then you'll never fix it. You can't go to the snowies and you can't go to the sweaties and say, "Listen, let's build this community." Because
No,
I don't think that's going to work.
well, that's what I've come to realize is that their job is to look after what they're doing and to try to be better and to win and all of that good stuff. And I know every time I raise this, they point at and say, well, listen, the North America six mans is a toxic cesspool, so is the European ones. The difference they have is that they have player bases of, if you look at the RLCS signups in Europe, it's 3,500 players. The SSA players signing up here, it's 120. Our base is so small, we can't afford the toxic bullshit. Noob Slice mentioned Falliser, and I would agree with that. There was a guy who probably it's probably been the greatest, who was the greatest campaigner for the Rocket League community in this region. And the shit that guy got, and what I used to get told about him, and I was brand new in the scene then. I was like, this is 2019, 2020, and it's like, oh fuck, this guy's doing this. I mean, he was originally, he and Elf were like the guys who set up six mans, and they were doing all this, and I was like, fuck, this is great. And then you talk to others like, fuck that Falliser guy, and I'm like, what the, there's 12 people here.
It's bringing your little patch of grass and not wanting to let anyone else on your patch of grass. It is an inherent South African mentality which destroys us in so many ways of life. It is, and also, to all credit to South Africans as well, we do live in a country where we need to protect our own, and we feel the need to protect our own. So not to say that that's unwarranted, but that bleeds into every aspect of life. Like you're always second guessing the loyalty of someone else, whether you can trust someone else. You're always second guessing whether you can share this idea with someone. You always, you feel like you need to prove yourself, and that's very much, when Falliser left, my heart kind of broke, because what you described him as now is exactly who he was. He was coming to me with a stack of papers saying that, listen, this is I want to just run this tournament. My esport is dying. Please, can we just try and run something for it? And I said, yeah, man. I mean, hell yeah, I love what you're doing. Let's see what we can do. And that's where the 80K tournaments came from. And that's how I got involved in Rocket League. So it's a problem that's not very easy to fix, because it takes an extraordinary group of people to be able to turn a region around. I don't know if you remember the Rocket League World Cup that they did in Saudi, right? Do you remember what happened when, I think it was Chile qualified, a team, like, they had to qualify through, and England didn't make it through. And when they finished their game, they all ran to each other, and like all the South American teams embraced each other and jumped up and down. Do you think that would happen if we had 3 SSA teams at a LAN? Like,
No, because they would all be Spanish.
yeah, they wouldn't have qualified.
Yeah, for the Rocket League World
Spaniards
Cup,
would not have qualified. Let's just make that statement.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, like, that for me, that's where my heart is community. And I think, like I said, in the capacity that we work in the space, it's not really our space. It's not our place to do that. Our place is to run and to try and uphold the tournament as much as we can.
Well, that segues nicely to this, is that the response to that tweet and things leading up to it, and I don't think anyone can appreciate how hard it was to do the RLCS broadcast this weekend. As someone who is overly invested in the fortunes of SSA players, it was really, really tough to do that broadcast. But what I've come to see out of where things have got to, and the circumstance that we've just described, I I want to be involved in building something for the long-term future of the Rocket League scene in this region, beyond the retirement of all the current crop of pros. After they've long gone and retired, I want to see something built for, hopefully in time for players like Ravi and Devour, where they can reap the glory of something that we've built. And for me, what I'm seeing is that the numbers, there's just too few of us. So I would like to focus my intention, my attention and my efforts and my energy into building community and school Rocket League, because I think that's what's going to bear fruit in the long term. We've got an RSC season coming up. In fact, I think signups are opening in just a few weeks. Bromeo and I are a bit stressed about that. So we'll see what comes of that. But building that, because when it's said and done, in RLCS right now, there's maybe 24, 30 SSA players really of any substance there. RSC, we can get up to 300, 350 players. High schools, I think there's currently playing competitive Rocket League at high schools is another 300 players. That's where we invest, because I think if we can grow the six-mans and the pro player base from 30, 40, 50 players to 2, 3, 4, 500, then maybe the numbers will overwhelm the tribal mentality of it. And that's kind of what I'm thinking and where I would like to start going.
Yeah, I mean, just to come back to the point of the community, I think if we had the high school Rocket League the way it is now, 4 years back, or just even 3 years back, I think we would have built a community that's way different than this one. When you do school Rocket League, you're doing it with your classmates, with other classmates. There's the community already. And if they grow together in high school Rocket League and they branch out to wherever they go, university or wherever, and that university level also has a Rocket League ecosystem in place, that's how you build the current community. It's not going to work. You can try and fix it. You can't fix it. I'm just going to put that out there. Going to put it plainly. You cannot fix the community as it is now. There is no community. But if high school Rocket League goes on the way it is now, keeps building at an exponential rate, hopefully, we can all just hope, and that branches out into university where they can keep going at Rocket League or just the esports in general, actually, if they can just keep building on esports in general as they go through life, that's where your community comes from. That's where the players, that's where your grassroots start coming from. Building player bases of that, you don't have such a big. Right now, we have a massive skill gap. You have your RLCS and then nothing. And then there's high school Rocket League. Those high school players would get smashed in RLCS or even just the tier lower VS or anything like that. They would not be able to make it far, which is sad, but it's the reality of things. But it's not to say that would be there for the next 2 years. RSC, if things keep building like that for these players to build into RLCS, I've said it before and I'll say it again, is that our issue is not with what's currently happening, it's with what's going to happen. It's with your high school, with your RSC. If we have something players can build into, then that would make the RLCS player base and community much stronger than what it is right now. You'd have players that can just go from high school into RLCS or from uni into RLCS or wherever into RLCS. Right now, you don't have that. We have a few players that stand out that are strong enough. Some players that, through putting in a lot of time, are good enough to compete in RLCS. Other than that, you have, like you mentioned, Gabriel, there's like 300 RSC, 300 high school odd players, and probably 80% of them would not even make a dent in RLCS. So it's definitely just building the basis for the next 3 years to then be able to have a community and say, now we can do it.
It's all about identity, right? And how you assimilate that identity. I don't think in RLCS any team identifies as, Limitless might be seen as, SSA's last chance or as the last bastion against this EU invasion, all in inverted commas. But I don't think SSA teams see other SSA teams as being on the same team as them, as like being part of the same community. I think that speaks very, very heavily to what Skill still said. And how do you fix that? You fix that through you need people at the top who are willing to be leaders, community changers. Like it's trickle down. It always has been. You look through politics, history, religion, sport, you look through everything. It's all about the influential people at the top. And if they're not willing to step up and do it, then it's never going to happen. And I'm not only talking about, the limitless. I'm not only talking about Snowy and Sweaty and To Die For. I mean, they all have lives. They all have things that they have to juggle outside of that. But, a great example is Worthy, for example. As far as I'm concerned, Worthy is an incredible community leader. And he does everything he can to really try and spread the good word of Rocket League, and about the parts about Rocket League that people love. And I think the more of that we get, the more that things are going to start changing for the better. So yeah, I mean, having 30 milliseconds to EU would also help, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
as a side note, sorry to interject, I was thinking about this earlier. Imagine the absolute shit show we would have had if we didn't get servers back.
Oh,
And we had
Jesus.
to play
Yeah.
SSA RLCS on EU servers. Imagine the shit show for that. And then you have the inclusion of EU people, and they play low ping, you play high ping. It would have been. I was just hypothetically thinking of that situation, how bad that would have been. And thank goodness we have servers.
Well, there's a
So-
fantastic statement there, which is no matter how bad things are, it can always be worse.
Could have been worse. Very
I mean,
true.
what I wanted to say, just to build on what everybody has been saying, is we spoke briefly about RSC and the challenges of throwing something like that together, and the pro uptake from RSC. Some's been good, some's been spectacularly bad, but we mentioned names like Worty, talking about Friction, Eliakim, faces we've seen coming into RSC season on season. And I think one of my favorite moments was there was some kid in Rival, which is basically Champ 1, Champ 2, Champ 2, Champ 3, around there. And this kid comes to me and says, "Hey, Bromeo, if I play well this coming season and I get, promoted to master, do you think I can, play in the same team as Werty?" And I feel like, because these pro players have no idea how much weight that they carry.
Mm.
And for that, it was so profound because it was so innocuous. This kid just wants to play with Werty. And that is his entire reason for playing RSC, and his entire reason for, wanting to improve is he just wants to play with his heroes. And we talk about building community and stuff like that. I mean, myself and Greybeard have the cuck job of TOing RSC. We're the ones who deal with the complaints and finding the money and getting signups organized and doing all of the admin. And there's so much more to be done, but just from a heart level, it doesn't have to be, this big involvement thing. Sometimes it just takes signing up for RSC for a season to make the world of difference to a group of players who got to play alongside their heroes.
Mm.
And that for me is so much bigger. And I mean, I see that, there's some questions in chat like, how would starting from school level assist in growth? Will the pros assist in the development of these players? And that for me is how pros assist. They just do it by showing up, being present for more than themselves. And Werty, like you mentioned, Skill Steel is a prime example. He showed up, he's played alongside players who are not as good as him, and it did not help his professional development at all. But for a whole group of players, they will forever remember that entire season that they got to play alongside him and against him. And that is the difference maker. It doesn't have to be more than that. It doesn't have to be scrims against EU. It doesn't have to be, scrimming against, Snowy's elites. If we're developing the future, because I agree, the community as it stands now, the current group of pros, it might not be it for them. This current rule set is not favorable at all. But if we can grow the community and develop a community that's better than the one that currently exists, then we are doing something different. We are moving in the right direction.
Two things. I think that's such a huge point, Bromeo, and And you certainly, I think you get a lot more of that direct feedback on RSC just because you've been so close to the ground on it. And a point that I've harped on for ages, and a simple thing that wouldn't just be good for the community, but would be so good for the players themselves, is streaming. Building a community around yourself as a professional player. And I know if I always think of somebody like Daps, and the problem with someone like Daps is that he's so invested in himself and so concerned about, how he's doing and is he helping his team go and whatever, that he has no concept that there are other people that would actually love to see him play, would love to play with him, love to be a part of a community, because he doesn't see himself as that. And I can get it. It's a and I'm not even saying it's humble. It's probably more self-conscious maybe, but if someone like Daps was regularly streaming and engaging with the people who show up outside, because initially what happens is I think pros start streaming, so other teammates and pros will come in and give them shit in chat and give them shit in Discord, and then they go, fuck it, I'm not going to stream anymore. But if they pushed beyond that and started to build a community around themselves, that is so enormously helpful to the community, but then also to the player themselves, as I've said, because there's a huge amount of value in having a platform and having an audience. So that's one thing that can be done. In addition to, you sign up for RSC, you're playing one game a week. You're playing one series of 4 games a week, and it does make a huge difference. And there's not a huge amount of glory for you as a pro player, but my goodness, it makes an impact. Cosmico asked about like getting involved in schools. How does getting involved in schools help? And I don't think we even need pros to be involved directly in schools, but that's where you start to nurture it. And then we have to build the pipeline from schools into something small and competitive, which leads its way to our RLCS. And that's where the tweet I made, coming back to that, was instead of having 2 million rand a year going to a select few playing in regionals, 2 million rand, my God, we could put on massive community events, smaller prize pool community things that we can promote and market, get people into playing where there's a chance for them to win something, chance for them to be, and that's what I was alluding to. And if that doesn't happen, that's all very well, but somehow that's the problem I want to solve. How do I unlock 2 million rand that Bromeo and I and Sean S. Falcon and the others who are actively working in community can put on things? Have a local LAN, have tournaments, have things that bring other people outside of the 40 players playing in RLCS. And I think that's a big missing thing, which then leads me to this question, which is, let's assume the rules do not change. And I know all of us
If y'all don't follow Graybeard, you need to get in there.
Either vocally or otherwise are praying desperately that there is a rule change. And make no mistake, I am very much in favor of a rule change. I don't think hard region lock is good for us. And Skill, you might have a different perspective on that. But we absolutely need a 2/3. And my God, I'll take a 1/3. But let's assume the rules don't change. Where to from here?
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. I don't think the rules are changing. I think if it would have changed, it would have changed last season. But anyways, okay. So if hypothetically the rules don't change, then what now? Again, I think it stems from the fact that it won't come from the current RLCS community. I think thinking of it now, we're probably too focused on what can we do currently for this community playing RLCS, the Limitless, the Cosmico, the Gunzers, all those players, what we can do currently to get them above the EU players. Realistically, I don't think that's changing in the next few seasons. I think where it's going to come from is what we're building right now. Again, grassroots to high schools, all those, the RSC, those players will be the ones that will probably be putting this region back on the map. If the Limitlesses don't change what they need to change playstyle wise or whatever else, then that won't happen in the next few seasons if the rules don't change. So again, it will come back to those high schools and those things run there, the local tournaments where it is region locked, where those players are kind of isolated and building towards RLCS. Those will be the community that will kind of bring us back up to speed. But I don't know, man. I don't think currently there's anything we can do right now to bring us above EU. It's not going to happen next year. It'll probably not happen the year after that.
So if
it is a hard reality to swallow. But again,
and maybe
I mean, go for it.
No, maybe that's part of it. Is we have to come to a point of acceptance, and I do get it. People like Snowy, Sweaty to Die For, yourself, Eli, Daps, they're all at the sort of upper end of when you're starting to kind of retire out of Rocket League. And so it is rough. If the rules don't change, it doesn't work out. But my perspective is, okay, well, let's assume the rules never change. How do we prepare ourselves for 4 years' time where there is a chance? And that's where I think, certainly from my perspective, that's where what I'd like to be on. And Noob, that brings me to a question to you, because let's say, and it goes to your response to the tweet I made on Friday. Let's say we find a benefactor and they say, we'll give you 2 million rand for the next year for Rocket League. What would we do with that? Because we do know that just throwing money at something doesn't solve it. But let's say we got that. What would we do with it to build something for Rocket League broadly?
I mean, my dream that I've had for a long time, and that if I ever happen to marry extremely rich or, find a benefactor, I think I would want to buy a warehouse, kit it out with PCs and a bar, and just make this incredible space where people come to game, run a shitload of online tournaments that all culminate in the space, pay for their flights, pay for their accommodation, and get people in a space where you play the tournaments, it gets broadcast, there's a content corner that people go sit, do contents, do interviews, chat with each other, play games, make a whole lot of filler content for future tournaments. That's the one thing. But then also, the moment the games are done for the day, is we put on the spit bri, we open the bar, everyone gets to hang out together and talk shit. That's my dream. If I had the money, that is what I would do. Is I would have, for lack of a better word, an 80K arena, right? That would essentially invite communities and integrate into ecosystem. Laugh, am I allowed in? Oh, I don't know, buddy. That depends on your behavior. I need to see your ID.
Yeah, with the warehouse be region locked.
With the warehouse be region locked. I need your South African ID, bro, to come in. And I think it's that level of really focusing on community that I would do what I wanted. I mean, I've got a business plan for that. I've had one for 2 years that I've refined every 6 months.
How much money does it need? I'm curious what you've just said, because I said as a random figure, 2 million rand over a year. Would that be enough to kickstart this thing and get it going?
It depends on a number of factors. It depends on interested parties. It depends if a hardware supplier, distributor is keen to get involved. It depends on partnering with other people who already have the hardware, and what they think their kind of involvement or their cut would be. There's a whole lot of things, and I've run the numbers, but to get started, off the rip would be around 800,000. It's not 2 mil, but it's kind of something that I would love to do. But I, for a long time, I've spoken to my admins, Josh and Jason, about wanting Orange Hat Esports, which was my agency, my esports company, to really start doing community focused events, in the sense that it really comes down to focusing on the individual players. As much as T1 esports does, because that's why T1 esports is where it is because people are invested in the players. They're not invested in the fancy lights. They're not invested in the big screens. They're invested in these storylines that people get to connect to, which is so difficult to do in a situation like ours, where there's not a lot of tier 2 events. Even one of the most impactful things I've seen out of Rocket League is when ACGL had their LAN and Werty was doing interviews. You know what I'm saying? Like he had an interview there, and that chat that he had, and you know, speaking to younger players who had come in and played, that was some of the most impactful content I've ever seen, you know, in Rocket League. And that was so simple. That was setting up a webcam and a microphone. It's an opportunity that we don't have. It's opportunities like that that we don't currently have. So that is what I would like to focus on, is getting a rotating podcast like set up in this venue, let's say warehouse, and you've got yourself and Bromeo and Skill and myself. We kick it off, and then we jump off, and then Eli jumps on with Werty, and then one of them jumps off. It's just exposure, you know, like it's just exposure to the people. And I always use a great example. I said that I'm ADHD, so I jump through 100 hobbies a year, right? It's just an unfortunate side effect of being ADHD. But when I started playing padel, for example, paddle, what got me into it was the
Jesus
community.
Christ.
What got me into golf was
So
the
that was a
community.
great chat show that we've just had. Thank you, everybody.
No. No, listen, trust me on this. Where every time I've entered a hobby, it was completely based on the community. It was not based on my enjoyment of the sport. I went
Okay.
in, I said, I might like this, and I got well received, and then I got into it. You know, so that ties back into creating an environment where people feel welcome, that they can be part of a community, that it's not dictated like inherently, like it is in a closed, like closed circuit, but in a small ecosystem like ourselves, the community is dictated by those at the top. We've said this already. But to be able to create opportunities for people to realize that they are the community, it's in their hands to be able to influence and make people feel welcome and make their experience feel good. You know, I met Skill. I'll never forget. It was when it was the LAN that Wolf was running. I can't. It was
Oh, the one in
remember
Cape
what it
Town.
was
Yeah.
called. The one in Cape Town.
It's Wolf something, man.
And yeah, I had this
Oh,
like very interesting opinion of, you know, the Rocket League elite myself. I was like, damn, these guys really don't like me, and that's okay. Like I'll figure it out as we go along.
wait, did
And
you get that impression from me or?
no, just in general, like you kind of
Okay, I was
apply
about to
as a
say I was
you
pretty nice that day.
no, listen, I'm getting to that. You applied as this broad stroke, okay? And then I got to that event that day, and Skill still like saw me and went out of his way to come to me and speak to me and chat to me. And you know, that doesn't happen enough. So I'm gonna end it there. But if I had 2 million rand, I'd start a flippin' LAN warehouse where we run so many events through there that, you know, people come because they want to be there for the vibe. They're not there for the prize money. They're not there for the ego. They're not there for the popularity. They're there because this is something great to be a part of. And unfortunately, RLCS isn't meant to be a vehicle of that.
Yes.
RLCS is a vehicle of T1 players. And that's what it is. And it's not ever going to be anything different. So to finally go back to your question, when you said, if we had this 2 million rand instead of RLCS, I wouldn't do away with RLCS because it has its function. But I would like 2 million rand in the hands of people who can really cater to the community.
Yeah, my question was specifically not instead of RLCS because SSA is absolutely here to stay within RLCS. There's a greater chance of getting a 2/3 rule than there is of SSA being removed from RLCS right now. So my question was more, if I were making a pitch to someone and said, give us 2 million rand, what the fuck would we do with it to make sure we built the community? And, you know, and honestly, I think, Noob, you and I need to talk some more, because I think you've got some on the ground experience that I think that we could benefit from in terms of what we pitch and how we pitch it. But we will take that conversation further. And as we start winding toward the end of this, my next question, because this comes from another tweet a while ago, which funny enough, Werty responded to, and he was vehemently opposed to it. But it leads me to a broader question. I was going, is there an argument for Limitless to bring on a high-level EU player onto their team? Never mind who would have to be kicked from the team, but bring on and make a run for Worlds. And I know Werty is very, very, very opposed to that. But Skill still, as a broad... So people do not benefit from imports, but if there were more 1/3, 2/3 teams, would that be of benefit? Is that something you would advocate for as a means to get immediate SSA improvement, or at least SSA involvement deeper into the tournaments?
1/3 would be first prize. 2/3 is still
Sorry,
not bad. At least,
sorry. In terms of clarifying terms, when I say 2/3, I'm saying 2 SSA, 1 EU. 1/3 is 1 SSA, 2 EU.
Oh, okay. I mean, okay, 2/3 first prize, 1/3
Yes.
still acceptable. So look, at the top, probably not. I think the benefit falls off the higher up you go on the ladder. If you take, okay, so let's take Relentless. So Relentless had quite a good run, the Open 4. That is Zany with 2 EU players, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
Star and Energize.
Mm.
They had a pretty good run. It still, remains to be seen if they can make that deep run again. Now you have who was it? Cristobal Colon made the guns change, right?
Correct.
Yes. So there you have another SSA 2 EU guy. So that in itself is probably not the worst. You still have local representation. It would be the same as what APAC had. They had the one APAC representative and 2 EU guys going to major. That's still, you can still make an argument that that's fine. You have SSA representation. It's fine. You want more, but we always want more. We've established that. And they saw quite a great improvement in their placement. Speaking on Relentless now, it still remains to be seen if they can replicate that. But again, recency bias, they made quite a good placement. They were 1 game off from making top 6. That's great. That's insane. That's Zany's first.
They were 1 overtime goal away from
exactly.
making.
Yeah, that's even better, worse, whichever way you want to spin it. But from taking, what was it, Zany, Star, and who was the
Wheelu.
one that they and Wheelu. Wheelu's still a great player on Cosmico, making a difference. But now you switch them over for 2 EU guys. Energizer is pretty good as well, very, very good. And look at the tremendous difference that made for Relentless. Again, we have to see that consistency, but just recency bias, they made a great run. So how does that affect it if you apply that to every other team? So like I said, the Limitless, I don't think benefits that much. You can put 2 EU guys with Snowy, they do well. Probably a little bit better, the same as now. 2 guys with To Die For, 2 guys with Sweaty. You can put it that way and you'll probably see them do much better, the same, or worse. It's all hypothetical. You can never say if they'll do better or worse. But looking at the statistics of what's happened, that'll probably be the case. But I wouldn't say Limitless need to make that change. Bringing in a high-level EU player, like I said.
Sorry, let's take Limitless out of the equation. Would you advocate for there being more mixed teams going forward from here?
Oh yeah, no, I was working towards that.
Sorry.
But anyways, cutting no worries. So cutting away the very top, there's really minimal benefit to no benefit, right? But if you bring it into the middle of the pack, so let's use, who can I use? We can probably use Goober Gang. So Goober Gang was Willen's team, I think. That was Willen's team. So taking a team like that and putting in either 1 or 2 high-level EU players would probably net them the same benefit as what Relentless had.
Okay.
Taking lower than that, then you start running into a skill gap. So putting a high-level EU guy or 2 high-level EU guys with a low-level SSA player, that opens up room for mistake, right? So you won't necessarily get as much benefit from that as you might think. So it depends on where you apply it. Like I can see some of these teams that would benefit from getting a high-level EU guy in there, but it's difficult to say if that carries over. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I can see some of these guys would benefit from that, but again, it'll be difficult to say if so or not.
I think that's good insight, just because, and that's one area where I will concede that I don't have the expertise to have a firm opinion on that. I think in the other areas where I've been called out, I disagree. But in that, because it's not something I'm intimately familiar with, and I think you've given good insight on that. And but to me, it seemed, if these are going to be the rules, to me that seems a way where, up and coming players who are nowhere near ready for the big stage, maybe they start to seek out EU players and say, hey, listen, come and get on a team with me. I mean, we saw Sethi did it on they didn't go very far at all, but I don't know what level the EU players were. But it's also a way, to me, players who are coming up, it would make sense to me for them to start networking and increasing their networking across Europe, so that when it comes time to forming teams for RLCS, they've got options there, because after your top 5 or 6 SSA teams, SSA based teams, it becomes a little bit like the Bold and the Beautiful, where everybody gets a chance to have an affair with everybody else over the course of a season. You know, the pool is so small, everybody teams with everybody, and it kind of goes nowhere. Me desperately hoping for someone to come in there.
For us who track the roster changes, Greybeard, like, trust me, we know. Like, it's almost disheartening in a sense to see teams take a stab at it and then break up and then remix and then go again.
Yeah.
And there's some teams that have done this almost every regional. There's a specific team I have in mind that's almost done it every region. And it's kind of sad because that's how you improve. You know, there's no cohesion. And something that I saw in the chat about, you know, if you let To Die For and put To Die For with a import player, you will be unstoppable. Or if you put guns and Sweaty, guns and To Die For with a high EU level player, they're winning every regional. That's great and everything, but then that breaks down community cohesion, because then you're not going to be looking to your own community, to improving your own community, to build a team strong enough for RLCS. You're going to be looking externally, which is only going to exacerbate the problem.
But we're being forced into that corner, Noob Slice.
No. I know we've been forced into it, but it's now becoming a vicious cycle.
Yes.
We're now caught in a vicious cycle. So, you know, if it's really going to be all about the money, then so be it, do it. But there should be a little bit of pride attached to it, where right now there's no pride attached to it. It's about sticking it to EU and being the best of SSA at the same time, which is not a good mentality to have. I think I spoke to you about it, Greybeard, that, you know, before the regions were completely open, anyone could sign up for SSA. Everyone was looking at to Limitless as the ceiling. Limitless was the goal. I had this chat with Eliakim. Actually, Eli, if you're still in the chat, you can remember we had this chat. Pretty sure it was when we were out that one night together. Everyone was looking at Limitless as the ceiling. If you start looking at, you know, let's say you want to beat Team Secret at the major. Sorry, Laf, you guys couldn't pull that off. But if you guys want to beat Team Secret at the major, right, then that could be a goal. That's an incredible goal that if you work towards it, you're going to excel beating Limitless a lot quicker. They were your ceiling. You know, that's my view, is that everything that distracts from that is detrimental towards a region development. And there's so many complicated ways of looking at it, so many factors, so many, you know, things that, you know, we can look at it from, but it's just not a good place at all. We are not in a good place in almost any sense of the word. Even if Limitless went and beat Foot and made it to the major and made it to Worlds, where does that leave the rest of the community? You know, it's a victory. Yay, we beat Region Lock, but we didn't. You know, I think that's where my biggest worries come in. So yeah.
All right. So we're coming to the end now. So now we have to do a round of reasons to not be depressed. Reasons for optimism and hope about the future. And Noob Slice, I don't have many rules on this podcast. And you're welcome to swear, you're welcome to vape. But the one rule I do have on my podcast and on my stream is we do not name check Laf. But so let's look to the future. Who wants to go with a bit of optimism?
I can start, possibly because, you know, since I'm a silver 3, I've got nothing to lose. But I think, honestly, there is so much to look forward to in this region. There's so much going on. And yes, it's a bit chalked from the RLCS perspective. Our teams aren't doing well. And historically, the teams that have done well aren't doing well against their own standards. And that's not a nice, fun time to be involved in RLCS. So sure, we'll chalk that down to an L and we'll go again next week. And there's a lot of work that we're doing behind the scenes to try and make Rocket League a better place than what we left it. And that's an ongoing effort, meeting after meeting and spreadsheet after spreadsheet and sponsorship meeting after sponsorship meeting. But work is consistently being done. And my dream one day is to say to Noob Slice, yes, let's go do that house now. Let's put a couple PCs in and like get this thing going, because my biggest dream as well is have an RSC LAN, have a consistent yearly community function where orgs can start developing a following, where orgs can actually have fans, because there's a venue and a reason for them to exist. And there's so much about community that is being developed that nobody will probably even hear about because it doesn't concern them or they're even interested in it. But there are people out there who are doing it. And it's not glamorous. It's not financially rewarding. Nobody will talk about you. But at the end of the day, we're doing it because we love it. We love Rocket League and we love this community. So that for me is the positive, is that doesn't matter how Limitless do on the weekend, our work continues.
Nicely said. Next. If you've got anything positive to say, you can go next. Otherwise, I'll close it out.
Nucleus looks like he has a few.
No, just from my perspective, it's always about perspective. I've been in esports a while. I've been through kind of every stage of being involved in esports, and I think there's very little that I've cared more about than seeing the region develop, right? And it didn't matter which esport it was. It didn't develop which players it were. For me, it was more about pride, national pride. And I think that RLCS in Sub-Saharan Africa has led the way for esports in this country. I think that there has been nothing like it. I don't think there will be something like it for a long time, unless Riot Games decides to actually just release the damn League of Legends service. But that is what I'm extremely proud of. And the project and who it's involved. It went from players not knowing what's what, these players that thought they might want to play competitively, but there was no reason. Then they formed teams. Then it was the old guard that stepped back, that I only got to know for a very short while. The casters that unpaid broadcast for 2 years, 3 years. How many years did you guys did unpaid broadcast? It's it's seeing people develop, it's seeing people grow up through Rocket League, and it's that kind of stuff which is just really inspiring for me. And I think that outside of a rule set, like, no one can take away what RLCS has become for us and how we've embraced it as a region. So yeah, I mean, that's always positive for me. That's what gets me up in the morning. That's why I love my job, is because it's really been a cornerstone. And I can't wait for the day that an esport eclipses us, because that means we've moved forward. So that's my bit of positivity. And every time I see a Rocket League play in person, it's always a fantastic experience. So I think it's only going to get better. I really do.
Yeah. I think just to reiterate kind of what Noob Slice was saying, but I'm just plagiarizing, but putting it in different words. If you strip down what SSA has to the bare minimum, we have RLCS, full RLCS inclusion, majors. We have the world spot still, right? Yeah. So we have RLCS, we have majors, we have worlds, we have VS, we have ACGL. I don't know what happened to ATK, to be honest, but they still lingering around, I suppose. We have RSC, we have high school Rocket League, probably at its peak. No, not at its peak. I shouldn't say that. On its way to up and up. We have so much investment, so much time, so much community effort going on, and the community is kind of voicing it like we've lost everything. Now, I know I am one to talk. I have voiced my unhappiness and my concerns for what everything means for RLCS. But if you look at it in the bigger picture, we have gained so much. You can make the argument we didn't deserve it, but look at what we've gained over just like 2 years. What was it? When 2021?
4 years.
Since
4
then,
years.
yeah,
4 years.
4 years.
Gil.
Over 4 years, we've had probably 2,000% more involvement, 2,000% more effort, 2,000% more financial inclusion than we ever had. Probably, if you asked me in 2019 or 2018, listen, this is what you'll be having in 4 years. I tell you, no, what? You must be on something. There's no way we can look at this and voice our concerns in a way that we're saying we lost everything. That's kind of what it looks like to the outside world, is we're complaining when look what we've got. I think the way that we've been doing it is wrong. We can still voice the concerns that we have, but probably just in a better way, in a way that makes more sense. But just my point being is, look at what we've gained over the past 4 years. Can we really complain? We can, but can we really complain?
I will now plagiarize you a little bit, and in closing say this: my favorite skill steal story, and I've told it numerous times. In fact, this is probably the 6th or 7th time I've told it on this podcast. When I first got involved in the Rocket League community was 2019, and almost out of the blue, I got asked to cast the VS finals in October of 2019 in the Maverick Center in Rivonia in Johannesburg. And it was a bring your own PC kind of deal. There wasn't even a PC you could play. You had to bring your own. And I can't remember what the prize pool was. It wasn't a lot of money, and I don't think there was. Were you even paid? Was your transport paid for, Skill?
So I stayed at Palace's place, just to give a little background.
But did they pay the airfare?
Yes. So we were part of IVE, and they paid the flights.
Okay. So Skill Steel flew up from Cape Town with his PC on his lap so that he could come and compete in the VS finals for a prize pool he probably wasn't going to see much of. But and that's where we met for the first time, and it's a great story. Despite everything that's going on and has gone on, and the abysmal weekend that we have had, we are in a better place than we have ever been. Even when there was region lock, there was realistically only 6 players who had a chance of making a LAN or making it to Worlds. 6 players out of the entire base in South Africa. Now, even with the EU imports, you're making $300 up to 32nd place. On a team of 3 people, it's $100. You're not going to retire on that money, but it's 18 grand there. I mean, 1,800 rand. Yeah, I know. It's 1,800 rand there or thereabout. Not bad for a weekend. It's something you can get. That was not available before. There are more opportunities than there ever have been. And yes, it's rough and it's tough, especially for the players that are closer to retirement. I feel you. I absolutely understand your pain. But we have to come to acceptance about the world we live in. The future, I think, looks very bright. The opportunities look far better than they ever have been before. And I will close it on that. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been an absolute pleasure. And Noob Slice, I'm glad you erred on the side of coming on the podcast. I know there was a little bit of should I, shouldn't I? And I think you have done a banger job of representing what you do as a regional manager, the general context of esport, and in Rocket League more specifically. I think your insight has been amazing to have. And Skill Steal, as always, I would like to get you on a lot more. I think you're among the more level-headed of those in the community, and you have the wisdom of age and the experience of time deep into the community. So thank you. And Bromeo, I'm glad you were here, but you're kind of hard to get rid of now. You're just kind of here every week. So
one day it just appeared.
Yeah. But it's been a banger, and everybody who was in chat, and it was a very engaged chat, and I appreciate you and thank you. And somehow, some way, we will build something great for this magnificent esport, an esport like which there is nothing in the world. Let's make it a banger globally, and let's make it a banger locally. So from me, Greybeard, from the Bromeo, from Skill Steal, and from the best regional manager in the world, peace! We are out.